the joke is my Spotify rap it's dumb every year because it's like your favorite bands are the New Deal and Sunsquabi and Dopapod, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, just I play in those bands at some point. I need to learn the music, you know.
I remember you posting that, like, yeah, these are all my favorite bands.
Yeah.
What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Best Show Ever podcast, the podcast where I interview people about the best shows that they have ever seen in their lives. I'm your host, Cam Herdt, and a very cool episode we got going on here today. We are interviewing the drummer of Sunsquabi and the New Deal, Scotty Zwang. This is a guy who, man, when you listen to Scotty's concert stories and his festival stories from his early days, as he's going to talk about here in this episode, it's a very relatable type of guy. Man, have we all been this dude at festivals and at shows. But Scotty now finds himself in a couple different touring bands and is completely supporting himself with his music and kind of living the dream. So just another one of those cool examples of a guy who has, you know, he was a drum tech. He found his way to work in the scene any way that he could and stick his foot in the door and is now carved out his own little spot and is able to, you know, tour and play shows. Sunsquabi has been on tour. That's where I'm catching Scotty on this tour right now. He's in Utah when we speak, but they're on tour all the time. And then he's going to meet up with the New Deal and do something with them. And so just a cool look at a guy who is in this scene that we love so much. He's a little bit part of that Jamtronica scene, you know, with Sunsquabi, and just a massive Fish fan, massive Disco Biscuits fan, massive fan of music, and it really lends itself to the playing, I got to imagine. And so have a blast, listen to this episode with Scotty from Sunsquabi and the New Deal. If you're interested in any other episodes that we've got out right now, we got a ton out for public consumption. There's another episode out right now with a Fish Studies Committee member, Isaac Sloan. Great episode. And there are also about 5 or 6 episodes that are out on the Patreon right now that they'll be released over the next couple of weeks. But if you want episodes immediately, if you want access to those right now, you can become a member for $4, and you get access to the conversations as soon as they're uploaded, which is usually the day of the interview. So pretty cool. Guys, also, if you'd like to subscribe and like and comment on all the different places that we're posting these episodes, that helps with the algorithm of everything, helps get the word out about Best Show Ever, and I appreciate all the support that you guys have given in that way. But I'm going to get out of the way of this intro here, enjoy this conversation that I had with Scotty Zwang from Sunsquabi and the New Deal, but first enjoy a little bit of music from none other than Loom. Sometimes you're uncomfortable on stage, but sometimes you're uncomfortable in the lobby of a hotel doing an interview.
Exactly.
Where are you guys right now?
We're in Salt Lake City. We played in Park City, Utah last night. Then we're in Salt Lake tonight. And then I'm done with winter Sunsquabi stuff.
Sweet.
And then I immediately fly, though, my flight takes off at 5:15 in the morning to go meet up with Tom Hamilton for some shows in the Northeast with him. So
sick.
Never stop.
I mean, right, never stopping. But I mean, could be worse trips, you know.
Oh no, it's great.
That's pretty cool.
Mind. Yeah.
Tom just texted me the other day. He's like, "When are you gonna fucking interview my buddy Scotty?" And I'm like, "We've been talking about it, man. All right. We both have schedules, okay."
It's true. It's hard to link up.
No, I'm glad we're finally doing it. Are you? Is there anything you're doing on the road that, like, I mean, first of all, how long is this leg of your tour? And is there anything that you do on the road to kind of like give yourself a little bit of a break from everything? I know that like when you're in it, you're very in it. When you're on the road, you're like very much all together all the time. But do you give yourself a break in any way, or?
Oh yeah, I find that I need to take like little breaks, no matter how much I like love someone, especially with bandmates. I find that I need to like get my little moment to kind of sneak away and be on my own. I also meditate as frequently as I possibly can. Exercise is also like another form of being able to get away and work out some energy outside of just the Groundhog's Day schedule of everything's kind of the same. Wake up, eat some food, get in the van or sprinter or bus, whatever it is, and then get to the venue. It's kind of, I like the scheduling of it all, and I get into like the zone and regiment, but I definitely need to like get away from the circus of it all from here and there, and it's definitely meditating and doing whatever is kind of the best way I can do it. So
yeah, dude,
that's sort of
yeah, crazy important. I mean, that's come up a bunch of times on the podcast through like artists and non-artists of like, this is how I get ready the day going into a show, because it's a lot of stimulation. And then like, are you the kind of guy? I mean, you've played tons of shows in your career at this point. Like you've played live a bunch. Are you the kind of guy that's like up all night after a show? Like, are you like kind of a little wired after that kind of experience, or is it a little?
It depends. I'm definitely not up all night. If most nights, once I'm done getting out of the venue and doing the normal thing and getting back to the hotel, I'm usually like, I need to shower between just like feeling sticky and gross from the show and just not being able to get really comfortable and into bed. Like I find I need to shower, and that kind of brings me down a bit. But it really depends. Last night I was definitely having some trouble going to sleep. I don't know if it's because I had yerba mate too close to the show, or I'm sure I could talk about this on here, and I don't necessarily care, but maybe it was a little bit of the mushrooms were still, I don't know.
Right.
But
No, very inappropriate topic on this podcast. Though. I'm just kidding.
We can't talk about this on the...
That also, as much as meditation comes up on the podcast, mushrooms maybe comes up just as much or more. So yeah.
Yeah, they kind of can go hand in hand in a way. So.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and they can leave you up. But I mean, that's how I'm feeling after. I mean, we were just talking about Jam Cruise before we got started here. Like after those couple of nights, like I was really trying to get to sleep so I could get some sleep for the thing I had to do the next day. And it's not like I was even up partying, but I was just like, yeah, I don't know, beaming after that experience. And so sometimes it can be hard to, wind it down for the night.
Oh, for sure. Especially Jam Cruise. Like I'm very sensitive to not be too like hippie about it, but I'm very sensitive to just like the energy of the room. And when you have a lot of people that have a lot of energy, it definitely can be hard to like get down sometimes. But Jam Cruise is good in that way. Some people find the boat like soothing and they can kind of rock themselves to sleep easy, and some people have a hard time with it. So I guess, to each his own. But.
Yeah, everyone was like, "Oh man, you're not going to bed on the ship or whatever," and it didn't feel like there was like a party in my hallway at all moments. So like it didn't feel like right outside of like where I went to bed every night was pretty quiet. Like the party was kind of out on the decks, and like out in the areas and stuff. And so it's not like it was like people banging on the walls all night long, but it is. You can truly be doing something at all hours. For
sure. I feel like there's like, yeah, exactly. There's maybe like a 4-hour period of time where like it's a little like the 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. or right. Or at least that's my experience of like the quiet moment of Jam Cruise. Otherwise, like it kind of just goes for 5 days.
Truly, there is something to do, and I will. If there's something to go do, I might go down and do it. So I was I was up after those shows for sure. Man, we could talk about your shows a bunch on this, but that's not what this podcast is about. It is about the shows that you have seen, and so we're going to get into those a little bit here. Before we get into like your best shows and your honorable mentions and all that stuff, what's the first concert you ever saw in your life?
So the first concert I ever saw in my life, but I have no recollection of, is when I was 3 years old. My parents took me to go see Bonnie Raitt.
Sick.
At Jones Beach in New York, where I'm from on Long Island. And it makes a lot of sense. I'm a huge Bonnie Raitt fan. And honestly, a lot of that 70s movement of like blues artists turned singer-songwriters, the James Taylors and the Jackson Browns and all those sorts of people are like a huge influence in my life. And Bonnie holds like a super special place in my heart. And it was only a few years ago that I realized that my parents were like, oh, you're at that age where, you know, you're young enough we could take you out and go do stuff and you can experience a concert. But I guess somehow they thought it was a good idea to take a 3-year-old to a concert that I'm sure they really wanted to enjoy, and hopefully they did. I didn't hear any horror stories of me acting out, so
Right.
I'm assuming it went fine.
Right.
And that venue holds a special place in my heart as well. I mean, it's known as being one of the most beautiful venues in the country. And then I've seen plenty of Fish shows there, and Stevie Wonder, and all sorts of stuff. It was a very convenient venue to go to that also just happened to be a wonderful spot to see shows. So
Yeah, I mean, that's an East Coast spot. That place comes up again a lot on this podcast. People of all generations enjoying shows there. But yeah, I mean, like having parents that are like, this is something that we're going to bring our kid to. Were you like going to shows then, like at 4, 5, and 6 after these shows too, or?
So I don't necessarily remember too many concerts in my younger, you know, time period of my life. I started doing more concerts when I was a teenager, and I was really into like the local punk rock and ska scene on Long Island. Honestly, like my first concert I remember taking myself to wasn't until I was like with friends and getting dropped off by your parents, wasn't until like maybe 14, something along those lines. Which is interesting because I feel like now like it's kind of hard to even get into a venue unless you're 16 or older or you have a parent.
Right.
But yeah, Bonnie was my first concert ever. And then really like Goldfinger and some of that kind of Tony Hawk Pro Skater music was kind of the first concerts I took myself to.
You said ska and so many bells lit up in my head, dude. And most of them lit up with trumpets behind them. Yeah, dude. Saw Real Big Fish back in the day, of course. You know, gotta get to those shows. And that like,
oh yeah,
you know, that like lives in that time too. You're like, you know, freshman year of high school, like starting to, you know, become into your own as a teenager, and you're also like starting to go to things that are like, like a little bit more adult, like a little bit more of a party, and like, you know, all of those movies that came out in that time, like all of the, you know, American Pies and all those movies that like of like kids our age like becoming adults, like was just like backed by ska. Like you just, like, it's all so much ska music, you know, and so.
And Blink-182s and like
Dude.
every single one of those movies. So it's like I'm very much a child of that generation, the third ska movement, post-punk hardcore kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, dude, same. I somehow made it out of my teen years without a Blink-182 tattoo, but we got real close. We got way too close.
I got a 311 tattoo out of the deal, so I know the feeling.
Oh yeah. Oh, and happy holidays, by the way. Just
thank you.
yeah. 311. That's so funny, dude. 311 was a Summerfest band every summer. I mean, like them and OAR came through Summerfest, and that's like, you know, we moved up from Chicago to Wisconsin when I was like in, you know, like around that age, 10, 11, 12. And then Summerfest was like, you know, Christmas every single summer, and those types of bands, a lot of my hometown going to the fucking 311 show, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Time.
It was a staple from like, I mean, I've been listening to them since the 90s, but since 2001 to 06 at the very least, but 08, it was an every year thing. And then it kind of, I became more and more of a jam band kid from like 02 and really like 05. And the thought of going to see the concert that was pretty much the same every single time was like less interesting to me.
Yeah.
And then I was fully committed to being a hippie jam band kid. So
Is this also the time that you are getting into like playing the drums and playing music yourself, or?
I started playing drums in 1995, really. 96, I got a drum kit,
Mm.
and it became the big focus. Sports and all the extracurricular activities that you do in younger ages to like preteen were no longer a thing. It was all about music.
Yeah.
And starting bands and doing kind of the thing. And it was just like little baby steps. But by the time I was 10, 11 years old, my focus was purely drumming.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much stayed that way ever since.
I
So
was gonna say, sick, man. Well, I mean, that type of music lends itself to a lot of fun. You know, in those early days, the ska and the pop punk and all post punk and all that kind of stuff. There was also a lot of just absolute trash in those days.
oh yeah.
Just bad music. Do you have a worst show that you ever saw? And you don't have to like put down an artist at this point, but if you have a worst show.
I do have a worse show, but the experience was something that I hold close to my heart and is still was amazing. But musically speaking, easily worst concert. I went to my first Fish show was Conventry,
Oh fuck!
and it was also my first music festival.
Damn.
So
Not the best first impression on either thing.
yeah. That said, Fish was kind of in my world since 1995. My dad was a guitar player, and when he wasn't busy being a doctor, he was always really, really passionate about music. And he read a Guitar Player magazine article on Trey and kind of opened up his world to all that stuff. He was a huge Allman Brothers fan in the 70s and not really a Deadhead, but had a bunch of Dead records and was just always really into like blues inspired jam rock. So I had recollections of seeing the album cover for Hoist on CDs and seeing these weird characters of, Trey and all of them dressed up in like old time bathing suits and like exercise gear and thinking, what the hell is this? But was always kind of into it. And then in like 99, when Farmhouse came out, I kind of became more of like, I'm a Fish fan. It's not just a band my dad listens to. But I was also only 12 years old and they were just about to take a break. And then when they came back, for whatever reason in '03, I never had the chance to see it. It was a huge regret not going to Nassau Coliseum and checking out Island Tour's 98. But that time period of Fish when they were still like really firing on all cylinders and Trey wasn't going through his phase time period. And my brother was going to take me to it. And he's like, honestly, I just kind of want to go with my friends and not have to worry about my little brother. At this point, I'm still like 16, 17 years old. So he was like, but the next one, I'll take you to the next one. And then they announced that they were calling it quits and doing this big festival. So Coventry was my first festival. And musically, it's very well known to be a pretty terrible experience. And the mud and getting in and all of that, as terrible as it was, looking back on it, it was just this concept of like, wait, you could do this? Like you can get tens of thousands of people, almost 100,000 people in a field, and it's lawless and you're just kind of having fun and everyone's in it together. And that whole concept kind of opened up my world to what the music scene was like. And because of that, it was a wonderful experience for me. I mean, I definitely like blacked out like not even night zero, the night before.
Right.
And, like looking back on all these stories, you'd be like, that's a terrible time. You're stuck in the mud. You bounced off your head on the concrete strip of Shakedown and all these things. But looking back on it, it kind of opened up my world to like this. I think I'm going to start going to music festivals every summer. and it's very much what I did. But yeah, musically it was really bad, and I didn't even get to see the last day because I was a terrible student and I had to go back home to retake some sort of final exam so that I could
Oh
actually
yeah.
graduate high school.
Right.
um,
Yeah, of course.
so I missed the whole like Trey speech, crying, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was an eye-opening experience of don't get too fucked up on stage and have embarrassing moments in front of thousands of people. Um, but also there was the positive element of what our jam band culture is all about, and the community, and kind of setting yourself up to do, whether it's as a passionate music fan and going to concerts, or like I'm going to sell whatever on lot and try to go to as many shows as possible. It was definitely a very eye-opening experience that has stuck with me, the last 21 years since. So,
Yeah, man. I mean, like we talk about that a lot with Fish. We talk about that on Brad Sand's episode, that there was something about Fish that made people feel like you could you could maybe pull something like that off, or like you could even think that way, like because they were
yeah,
such a group of regular dudes. It's not like they were like beamed here from some other planet type celebrity people. They're like, you feel like you almost know those guys, and so like you're like I should really maybe start my own effort of getting people excited about my musical thing. It's like there is that spark of like, man, you can really blow something the way the fuck out if you keep working on it, and you stick together as a group, and all the cool things that Fish has done together, like creatively and collaborative effort wise. Like, yeah, it something about that group really like sparks the like, I can do that. I
yeah.
can't do that, but I could do something. you
Well,
know?
it shows you how just like a small concept or idea can really explode into this huge thing. I mean, if you look at the modern music festival experience that we are living and going through, and although Fish was inspired by other things, I know like Fuji Rock when they were out there was a huge eye-opening experience, and there were tons of festivals, especially after Woodstock, but in that time period that obviously like it already existed. But the concept of especially a singular band doing something on that scale wasn't really a thing. And then I
Yeah.
know like the Bonnaroo and Coachella people have, cited going to Fish festivals as being that inspiration point to want to do something in that realm. I mean, even Bonnaroo used Fish's creative director for those festivals to design the first handful of Bonnaroos. So they're hugely important in the modern music culture. It's why this whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction thing to me, I think, is important. I always joke like Fish is this huge band that sells all these tickets, but they probably have like 1 million, 2 million fans, and they're
Yeah.
just so dedicated that like everyone's in it and going to all the shows. And then there's like a small percentage of people that are just doing the show that's in their hometown and not following or doing multiple nights.
Right.
But they did inspire and spark, I feel like, at least me personally, the modern music festival era that we live in, for better or worse. It's definitely an oversaturated market sometimes, it feels like,
For
but
sure.
in that there's so much, so many options to go to. But it's definitely, I mean, it changed my life. So, I know from my personal experience that doing events like that definitely inspired me to be like, oh, this would be amazing to do on my own. And there was definitely a time period shortly after that where there was more of an emphasis on like, I should maybe do more of my own music stuff. It did not start in the jam band realm at first. That took another music festival about 5 years later to inspire me to be like, okay, I think I need to be in a jam
Oh
band.
shit. Well,
So,
yeah, yeah, no, and yeah, Fish is just so. Uh, they're in their own little vacuum, you know. Pun intended, I guess, like a little vacuum. There you go. But they really are in their own little vacuum of fame, you know, where the general population. If you go walk out down the street right now outside your hotel and you just like strike up conversation about fish with the guy, more than likely, dude is not going to understand who you're talking about, but he'll know
Yeah.
who like Coldplay and Taylor Swift and Beyonce are, who are like who Fish is competing with in
Yeah.
ticket sales every year, which is fucking crazy. But yeah, them getting recognized on that rock and roll Hall of Fame level, I think should be done and should have probably been done a long time ago. Because there's just like very few examples of bands or even like just art, anyone who's put out any kind of art that you can point to that's been doing it for 40 years in like a lively fashion, you know, that keeps people interested and all that kind of stuff. Man, we have not even gotten into your shows yet. We got to get to your.
We got into first show. We got into worst show.
We got the worst one, and that sparked a huge Fish conversation. Which I mean, of course, Coventry always does. Like it's like that's a pivotal point in the band history, and like thank God, you know, that wasn't the last chapter. Like I mean,
100%.
holy shit. I mean, but like you said, still very important for a lot of the people who went there. Do you have some honorable mention shows that are maybe not like your best show ever, but you'd be remiss if you didn't bring them up on the podcast?
I mean, can we talk festivals or is it a singular show?
No, festivals, absolutely, please.
So I guess I kind of brought it up slightly, but yeah, 5 years after Coventry, at this point I'm fully immersed in the jam band scene. I am following the Disco Biscuits kind of religiously. And Humphreys McGee, a handful of bands, but the festival culture had kind of continued in a way and eventually led me to Rothbury Music Festival in '09, which was a huge eye-opening experience. Still, I hold dear to my heart as maybe the best festival I've ever been to. But it was in that moment, I had just became friends with Alan O'Quinn, the drummer of the Disco Biscuits.
Yep.
I was a drum tech at this point. I worked for a drummer, KJ Sacco's, and huge band Pendulum, but also played later on with Conspirator, Disco Biscuit side project, and this like hardcore band, the Dillinger Escape Plan. And through that, I got to meet Alan from the Biscuits and Chris Myers from Humphreys McGee and all these drummers. It just became this like drummers wanted advice and they'd call me on gear and various things. It was kind of a cool but weird place to be in when your favorite drummers want to talk to you about what kind of gear they should be buying.
Yeah, dude.
And it was there that I met Chris Myers. I had already been there with the Biscuits, but I had like a artist pass or a VIP pass of some sort that got me kind of everywhere. And my band at the time was very much Foo Fighters, who were my favorite band. 311 Incubus kind of inspired, alternative 90s inspired band was kind of falling apart. And I was at the show seeing all these jam bands, and live electronic music was becoming a big thing with, Pretty Lights and Big Gigantic and all these bands that were kind of just emerging. And I thought to myself, I feel like if my band's breaking up or a band member's leaving, rather than saving this project, that maybe I should be, exploring finally being in a jam band in this scene that is my passion. It's the only shows I go to because I was so interested in how every show is different and the crowd response and energy. It just all felt really great. But that concert, between shifting my career over from drum tech to now drummer in an electronic jam band, which came after the fact, all of the sets of that weekend kind of set me up for what I feel like the career that I have now.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to be inspired by Pretty Lights and Big Gigantic, and then 6 months later join an electronic or Jamtronica band that then went on tour and opened up for Big Gigantic for 2 weeks and did late night stuff for Pretty Lights, and it all kind of snowballed into this very specific moment in time where it was like my life completely shifted into a new direction. So I honestly feel like that whole experience kind of got me where I am today. Musically, it was absolutely incredible. It's kind of hard to pinpoint all of the amazing sets. I mean, seeing the Dead on 4th of July, something about U.S. blues playing with fireworks going off, and you're
Just
literally you're standing with the Disco Biscuits and Umphreys and String Cheese and all these bands, and having this realization that like if it wasn't for this band on stage, I don't think any of this would exist.
Absolutely
kind of moment.
not. Yeah, dude.
It was absolutely incredible.
It's surreal shit, you know, and like how much bigger it is than you, you know?
Oh yeah.
In like a very comforting way. Like I think that, you know, we were talking about like fish being in a vacuum before, and like when you are trying to get into entertainment in any fashion, whether it's comedy or acting or music or anything, you start kind of realizing that the journey ahead of you is like super fucking daunting. There's a billion fucking drummers, and like, you know, and like all these bands are trying to make it, and it's like, oh man. And then you kind of land on the jam world a little bit, and it's still super competitive. It's still like all these people are still incredibly talented, but like it's like it's so much bigger than you, and it's also super super welcoming. All of a sudden these guys who you were kind of like lauding as like the Disco Biscuits and String Cheese are just like these super kind, or Humphreys McGee, like super kind awesome musicians who want your advice too, and like also want you involved. Like, yeah, it's kind of surreal, super surreal.
Oh yeah, it was super strange, but it was a cool experience to have that realization that like, you know, they say, I forget what the exact quote is, but it's like success is kind of just the combination of talent and luck, you know. And if you have the talent, but it's really like right place, right time. And all of these little moments that I've noticed that have helped along my career, as much as just meeting people that you idolized and realizing that they really are just regular human beings that have a talent and just pursued it. And it's that repetition, and just like, I like to say in this industry, like it's really, really difficult, but because of how it's all laid out and how things work, it does keep the people that are meant to be in it, because it could be so frustrating that you want to leave. But if you're that passionate about it and you really love it, like you're in it to win it, you know, and it doesn't matter how long it takes, you're gonna stay there and at least try and make it work. You know, it's not always like, this is my sole career and the only thing I do. You might have to work a job, you know, and sometimes you're fortunate where you don't. I mean, I haven't had to work a real job in 12 years, I think. But,
hell yeah, man.
But other than that, it's very much this, like, you realize that, like, if you really want to do it and you're super passionate about it and you just keep trying, that, like, eventually you're going to get there. And if you don't, then you don't. And maybe it's just a passion and you don't shift it as a career choice, because it's difficult, it's scary. And I guess like most things in life, there's no guarantees, but I would say it's probably more likely that, you know, the odds are greatly against you.
Oh yeah, you should bet on having to be resilient and stick it out for a long time, instead of betting on like, oh, we might make it and not have to work a job for 12 years or whatever. Like, you gotta have to back into that one and luck into that one, and also be ready when that kind of time comes, and that comes with like you said, staying consistent with your talent and keeping up with the repetition. Like, you know, you can't like put it on the shelf for 10 years and then come back and expect like things to happen, you know, or whatever. You got to stay consistent. You got to keep putting yourself out there, and like. I think that a lot of people don't realize what fully goes into. You're a touring act, you know, and you sell a lot of tickets in cool venues. It's like a long time before then, you know.
Oh yeah, and there's so many, and there's a million steps even just in the day before you get to like showtime, you know. But I mean, I love it. I definitely thrive in it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
chaos for sure,
Yeah.
but you need to just dive in. I mean, it's symbolic still of just like the jam band scene musically. It's like if you're not willing to like sacrifice and take chances, and if you're not willing to fall flat on your face, then like it's just not going to work out. And if you're hesitant, you're gonna fall on your face. Like that's just. But I think picking yourself up is how you like the most valuable lesson every single time. Like you never learn from your successes. You learn from your failures. So
Yeah, I mean, really have to give yourself no choice but to get back up during your failures if you want to like make it. Otherwise, you just like
yep.
I feel that way with actors and comedians I know who have made it. There's like maybe one example of someone who I can think, or maybe two, of like, wow, that really happened quick for that guy. Like
Yeah.
everyone I can think of was like doing what they were doing for 10 years, and then they got a big show, and then everyone's like, oh, they're overnight. It's like, is a
Yeah.
decade overnight? Like I don't
No.
like they were doing improv basements for a long time, and that didn't feel very glamorous in that
Yeah.
time, you know. So yeah,
You
yeah.
never know. Take it from
That,
the guy who's been in a new band every year and a half to 3 years over the last 15 years of my career. You know, it's never fun, but it is what it is. And I've kind of just embraced the hired gun concept of things. And
yeah,
that
dude.
when people need, in my case, a drummer, it's nice that they feel confident in that I can take on the gig and kind of enter in as smooth as possible. So,
I'll say this: I'm having so much fun working with musicians over comedians. I love my comedian friends, great people. I mean, musicians are just like stoked to be hanging out. They're just like, yeah, man, living the fucking dream. Whatever, we're down. And like, helping out with like some social media stuff with bands. Like, it's not that they don't care. It's not that the people in these bands don't care about their product, but they're just like, dude, this is sick. Fuck yeah, nice, love it. And then like a comedy sketch, like with all my comedy friends, it's like, well, what are we saying with the intro of the fucking blah, 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 blah. Like
yeah,
I've
the
just
intricacies.
I've been loving being the hired gun of comedy writing for social media bits.
I mean,
For-
it's pretty wonderful. I mean, you're relatable too within the scene because I remember at this point it's been a little over a year since the first time I saw your video of post Fish New Year's Eve. Like I just got to look at the set list because that was me playing New Year's because I've been chasing. I mean, like a lot of
oh
Fish heads,
fuck
but like I've
yeah,
been
dude.
chasing Gamehenge my whole life. And I've done Fish New Year's, and I'm from New York, so MSG and the whole
Oh,
concept. And as soon as it was happening, and then some guy at the show is like, "What are you talking about? They're not playing Gamehenge. It's not even in order." I'm like, "A, it is. B, there are lizards walking around MSG. Like you
it's not
can't.
even in order.
You're not.
The guy,
You're not going to
the
win
guy,
this argument. It's not happening."
the guy who's saying anything he can to like make sure he can sleep that night. He's like, it's not even fucking. They're
It's not
not
a big deal.
even.
It doesn't matter. I don't even care.
They didn't even do the rhombus correct because it's like all fucked. Um, that was a lot of people's best show ever. That show comes up as people's best show ever. You and I obviously weren't there. Do you have a best show ever? Is there a show that is your definitive best show you've ever seen in your life, like singular?
Of a singular artist, there are definitely a few that come to mind. As a curated event that was still a single day event, but a lot of bands, is probably my greatest concert. Not only was it the most inspiring thing I've ever seen that really took me further down the jam band route, pre Conventry, it was really Fish. And then I had been, pre-joining the band, I was a huge New Deal fan
Yeah.
in the early 2000s. And then like my brother took me to see Soul Live. And those were really like the three jam bands that I knew of. But in 2005, a friend I was working with, a fellow hippie who worked in my dad's doctor's office for years, was like, "Oh, you're into jam bands and stuff?" And we're both wearing tie-dyes. He's like, "You got to come to this event with me called the Jammies." in New York City. And it was a Pete Shapiro curated event that was like the Grammys for jam bands.
Yeah, dude.
And it was like the whole experience of like meeting the friend at the train station on Long Island, take Long Island Railroad, and eating acid and
Yeah.
driving into the train. And, Long Island Railroad goes right to Penn Station. And that year it was at the theater at Madison Square Garden. So it's like, you don't really even have to leave the train station. You're there. And, I enter into this wide, big world, not only because of substances, but because of, I'm still 18 years old and going to these like new kind of concert experiences and a whole new scene that I'm experiencing. It all felt really huge. And then I walk in there and the first person I see in the audience is Jeff Coffin, the saxophonist from Fatal Fleck and the Flecktones, and obviously now Dave Matthews Band, in the crowd with his saxophone being like, hey, how do I get to the stage? And I'm like, I have no idea, but the stage is there. So I'd maybe just walk in that direction. To then watch acts like the Benevento Russo duo was the first time I experienced and found out who they were, and Joe became a huge influence.
Fuck yeah.
And that record that came out that year, the Best Reason to Buy the Sun, is still, I think, one of the most inspiring records I've ever heard, and especially in the jam band scene, I think it was a total change of pace in the best way possible. It was where I discovered Humphreys McGee for the first time, and they were playing with Huey Lewis, who I'm a huge fan of. The duo played with Les Claypool and Mike Gordon, and Phil Lesh was like the guest of honor who played with everyone. So it was just this huge thing, and they were playing Dee's Diner. I was a huge Claypool fan for years through Primus and all the side projects. And then John Mayer's playing with Phil Lesh, and Buddy Guy and Questlove is playing drums. And I look behind me, and there's this Muppet-looking character that's just Mike Gordon just hanging out, and we're just smoking a joint with Mike Gordon, hanging out in the crowd before everyone started bothering him. We were the cool young kids. They were like, you want to smoke a joint, Mike? And just like so many amazing musical performances, but the whole experience kind of set me on this path. It was also the first time I saw the Disco Biscuits. And I became a huge Biscuits fan, not immediately, but similar to the festival experience of things. Camp Bisco became my first yearly festival that I would go to because of loving the New Deal and just discovering the Benevento Russo duo and Humphreys McGee, and all those bands were there. It became the festival that you could spend at the time like $85 to $100 and go to, at the time, 2 nights of music. It eventually expanded to 3 nights of music, but it opened my entire world to, I am now a full-on jam band hippie kid. Every weekend I'm going to see jam bands. Every summer I'm going to multiple festivals, traveling all over I would say the world, but really the United States and various island destination spots to go see these bands. It literally changed everything. So it's all these little stepping stones that I look back on. It's like Conventry kind of opened my world a little bit, but going to the jammies like exploded it wide open. Going to Rothbury changed again in a whole other shift of like, this is what I want to do for my career.
Yeah, man.
I knew music was going to be my career at this point. I had dropped out of college 3-4 years ago, in like 2006 at some point. And yeah, it was just a complete shift into, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And it's really because of the jam band scene. There's nothing else. So yeah,
man. Like, you're not alone in that. Obviously there are so many people who have, maybe even just seen one of these acts that you mentioned today, and their whole world got blown open just because of the way that, like you said, they interact with each other and the way that they interact with the audience. And there are just people who like the live music experience who, like me, like first time, like really getting to some jam band type shows, you're like, oh man, like people are here to, of course, party. We're taking the acid, we're smoking joints with Mike Gordon, whatever the fuck. But we're also like, you are someone who is there to watch the show and listen and kind of like pick apart and dissect what's going on a little bit. And there's things
Yeah.
that are just that become boring to you after you see the jam band experience. You're just like, got it. I know what's going on like within the first 5 minutes of this fucking show. And I'm
Yeah.
maybe even a little bit of a snob now because of it, but there's like
Oh,
that experience is new every time. That jam band experience, like even if you've seen 100 Disco Biscuit shows, the next one's going to be super different. Or if you know, same thing with Humphreys and all these other groups that you've mentioned. And so, really hard to not be like super like dove in, excited, and like you know have that not imprint the way that you make music moving forward. Like that, there's just no way that. And it's so funny. Like with the comedy thing, I didn't marry the two at all. Like I would go like fuck off from comedy for a little bit to go see Fish, you know, or one of these bands with my brother. And like not do comedy for the weekend in my mind, but like those are like the funniest weekends. Like you know, all the things that were going on in those weekends are like we're like dying laughing, you know, till like 4 a.m. over just the dumbest shit because of all of the, you know, because the way those weekends and the way those kind of shows just leave you, like you
yeah.
walk away just like, you know, like
Well,
fuck, I need to.
it's everything. It's not like I think the drug culture within the scene gets, I don't want to say a bad rap because I think there is an element that's very true that it's like it's not the best aspect of our scene, but all of that together does kind of play the where you're at in that venue and that experience, how the show went, the people and the company that you're keeping around you that you went to the show with, and then of course, the partying element is going to play a huge role in that. And I don't think that's specific to music in the same way that like people go to a house party.
Yeah, right.
That music is like a secondary thought. It's just kind of playing in the background. And people have the same experience. And it really does come to that energy of what is going on, whether it's the place that you're at or the company that you keep. And yeah, I think it can inspire you to do all sorts of crazy stuff. And why wouldn't you just take these hilarious stories and concepts and be able to mix the two together? I mean, that's kind of what the jam band world is kind of about in general. You have all these subgenres, and the only thing that ties them together is the fact that there's improvisation involved.
Right.
Yeah. And in the same way that it's like with jazz fusion, when that started in 60s, really 70s movement, it was like, oh, well, we could take these new instruments that are created now or are being influenced into jazz, and we can do a whole new thing with them, and we're just tying together the improvisation element to it. So then you go, 30 years later, and you have bands like the Disco Biscuits that are like, why can't we make techno music or trance music or whatever, or electronic music with live instruments in this jam band world, and watch how things slowly evolve. It's really cool. And honestly, it's what I love most about our scene is people that are trying new, different creative things. I almost prefer a band that isn't perfect, but is trying to do something new and original over a band that, is clean cut and sounds good, but just sounds like something that's existed already. So.
Dude, 1000%. And I think that there can be judgment in both ways. Like when you're talking about the drug aspect of the jam band and festival culture, and then also like the new band trying a new thing part of our culture. Like there can be judgment on both ends of those things. Like you see it online a lot. People are judging someone for being on psychedelics, or they're judging someone for like, all you hippies are all just out there doing drugs or whatever. And then it's almost like, no, it's not a part of the experience. We want to sweep it under the rug a little bit, and it's not that big of a deal. It is. Like it's super part of the deal, and it's definitely a place that you can feel safe or, you should feel safe going to like experiment a little bit with some psychedelics.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
Especially
the
when
artist
you're,
is going to take care of you a little bit.
yeah, especially when you're a little younger, like I don't want to advocate for people to go and get especially like too crazy. And
No.
nowadays, the thought of being on psychedelics in a large group of people is like, I don't really care for that. Um,
Yeah.
but I would be a hypocrite to say like, you shouldn't do that because that's what I did. And it
Yeah.
heavily inspired me into a world that I now call a career that I'm super passionate about. And there are definitely negative aspects, like you were saying, like you get a little jaded over time and you get to experience, especially the cooler, going to Rothbury as a artist and working for Dillinger Escape Plan and going to Bonnaroo in '09 and being like, oh, there's catering and all these things and there's special spots you can stand and you can do whatever. There's a free bar backstage. You do that. The next concert you go to when you don't have that, you're like, oh, this isn't
You're like, what's the
isn't
deal
as
with
great.
where's the catering? There's not even
Yeah,
any
yeah.
fucking catering out here. There's all these people standing next to me. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but there's also like the judgment of the new band thing. Like you can see it online again. Like you watch people like a clip of a band will come out and people will be like, this is bullshit. And it's like, this is a minute and a half clip of I'm assuming hour or hour and a half set. Like,
Yeah.
that's fucked. I mean, like people do that to comedy all the time. Like some comedians don't want you to clip up their show or post a clip of their show because it's out of context. But then, if you get to yourself at one of these jam festivals, there's a ton now. Like you said, it is a little oversaturated with the amount of festivals that happen in a summer. But what's nice is that they've kind of drilled down to like subgenres, and you can get to yourself to some of these jam festivals and see like whoever your favorite act is that you're loving right now, and then also a couple other acts that are like trying to be that act a little bit. Maybe not like they're a take on the Disco Biscuits or like clearly inspired by the Disco Biscuits. But you can also at some of these jam festivals like really watch some people like step off the cliff, and they know that the audience does not know the music quite yet.
Yeah.
Like it's cool for these more established bands to improvise a ton, but I mean, you got about 150 to 300 songs that are fucking people are down for. And they're going to be like stoked if you transition into it right now. And some of these newer acts are walking in to crowds of people who they know for a goddamn fact they don't know any of their music, and still like improvising and still trying to do something that pushes it forward, which is a cool thing. Is there been anyone maybe in the last year or two here that you've seen at a festival that you've been playing at and you've been like, oh shit, I didn't know anything, fuck yeah. Or maybe I knew a little bit.
Of newer bands, I actually was just last week playing in the Virgin Islands in St. John for this little jam festival they do like every year. This spot called the Windmill Bar, and I know one of the members of the band, but they're a relatively new band. At least they're new to me. They're called Tand.
Yeah, I know about Tand
from Florida, and
yeah, dude.
It was really cool. I mean, I've known their keyboardist Daryl for years. He used to run the Aura Music Festival in Florida. And, I've seen him play keyboards here or there, do stuff, but it was cool to see him in a band, and it was really cool to check out just how tight they were. They very much are a jam band. They have that jam band sound, but it felt like they were really free and creative with it. And, I absolutely love it. A lot of the music that I get into nowadays is still like, it kind of falls in the jam world, but it's not. I think like, I know you're a big King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard fan. And
fuck yeah.
Same here. I'm really into heavier music. I think just from growing up, like I was saying, with all the alternative rock, it kind of still just resonates and hits that spot. Like, if there's someone really riffing and jamming on something heavy, like I'm usually drawn into that quicker than like the wavy hippy dippy jam band stuff, as much as I do love that too. So things like that, it's kind of hard to pinpoint. I'm definitely a creature of habit, so I find myself like I find something I really like and I'm like sort of focused on that. I'm not necessarily always going out there and looking for too much new music. I kind of like for it to find me.
Yeah.
And I think King Gizzard's a prime example of that. I mean, at this point, I've known of their work for a while, but just from weird musician friends that are like a musician I used to play with who's very into microtonal instruments was like, this band, they play microtonal guitars and stuff. And that was, at this point, it must have been
a while ago
at least
now.
8 years ago, if not like closer to 9 or 10 years ago. So they've always been on my radar, but a similar situation. People are like, King Gizzard just came out of nowhere. And you're like, well, A, they've been around for at least a decade. And B, they put out like, I'm joking when I say 19 records a year, but they're putting out like 4 records a year. They're maximizing their content. It would be hard to not find out about a band that has put out 20 something records over 10 years.
Dude. Yes. And I think that like, it can be hard for a buddy to show me a new thing. They'll be like, dude, you're going to love this. And I'll like try to listen to the album while I'm doing something else. And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, dude, are you serious? Like, this is like right up your alley. And then it like you said, it takes me kind of getting hit by it in a certain moment in another way, I really do try to pull my head out of my own ass jam band wise and like listen to other artists and listen to things that are not Fish or like the Fish shows that I fucking went to, and I like the moment when something like I am cooking or I'm like cleaning the house or something. I like I'm like, what is going on here? And it is usually something that's a little crunchier. It's usually a little something that's like a little, and I mean crunchy like in the heavier sense, not crunchy
Distorted.
in the twirly. I mean, like that stuff's cool too, and like that also works in certain moments. But the things that like kind of raise my ear are also like the stuff that I was into when I was younger. Like all of a sudden it sounds a little fuzzier, or it gets a little fucking darker. That's interesting.
I also find myself like with playing with so many different artists that it's like a lot of times I'm learning so much music that it's like my spot. The joke is my Spotify rap it's dumb every year because it's like your favorite bands are The New Deal and Sunsquabi and Dopapod, and it's like I play in those bands. At some point, I need to learn the music.
I remember you posting that, like, these are all my favorite bands.
Yeah, turns out I've played in all of them, but
this has been really great, man. Thanks so much for we did it. We finally scheduled the time. We finally got the Wi-Fi to work. We made it all happen. I appreciate it, dude. This was a really great episode. I'll have this will come out in a couple weeks, but do you have anything that you want to plug? Anything that coming up that you're stoked on, or any shows that you're seeing that you're stoked on?
All the shows I want to see are like I can't go to because I have my own shows. That's the negative of what I do. It's always my friends are in town and I can go see something that I've seen a million times, but when like the Deftones are playing at the Ball Arena in Denver, or I'm not around, or like I kind of stopped listening to Incubus years ago because it just didn't resonate anymore. But in the 90s and early 2000s, they were one of my favorite bands, and I haven't seen them since Morning View came out. So they're playing Red Rocks. I'm like, maybe I'll go to that, but of course I can't go to that. I'm hoping to be home for the King Gizzard Festival in Colorado. And maybe to see them in Colorado Springs with the orchestra. But I'm never too sure, and I don't plan too far in advance, because when I do, like, I wanted to see Beat, the King Crimson thing with Danny Carey on drums and Steve Vai on guitar. And anytime I make plans, it's like I know it's not going to happen, so I kind of just go with the flow. Other than that, just staying busy, This is the last show with Sunsquabi for the winter tour. We go to Nicaragua in 2 weeks and do a festival there. And then I'm on tour for a solid month in April with them. I'm playing with Tom Hamilton next week. It'll be way past by the time this airs. But I've got 2 weeks of shows with him in May as well. And then there's some really cool stuff on the horizon that I can't talk about, but we'll
Sick.
get there at some point.
Sick. Well, dude, thank you again. Tell Tom I
Thank
said
you.
what's up.
Of course.
All right, so that was my conversation with Scotty Zwang from Sunsquabi. Just a really cool conversation about music, man, that eventually gets into Fish and how much they mean to us. Like, inescapable, those dudes. If you are someone who is out there who is like, man, I want in. I want in on all this. I want to be a part of it. Scotty's story is a great look into that, man. It's a great reminder of you just got to stick your neck out there. Maybe do some stuff for underpay for a little while, just to show people that you're into it. And you never know. You never know what's going to happen. You might be touring the country with Sunsquabi. So super cool to have Scotty on. We got another episode out right now with Isaac Sloan from Fish Studies. Check that one out. Like and subscribe here on YouTube or anywhere else you're listening to the Best Show Ever podcast. But until next time, guys, have a great show.